Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Okay, here we are on the podcast with Marco Krapels, and Marco is the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of Enphase. I remember Enphase way back when they had fins on their inverters. Kind of reminded me of an old Volkswagen cylinder head, and you guys have kind of changed since those days. So I don't know, can we bring back some of those old ones? That was kind of fun.
Yeah, they were. That was back in the days. Actually, that was a long time ago. We're celebrating our 20-year anniversary, so it may have been, one of those early years, the one that you're describing. But we've come a long way since.
Yeah, I think they were they were 170s or 175, something like that.
Yeah, those are old. Yeah. So, do you have them on your house?
No, I mean, I've been moving around and stuff like that. Well, actually, where I was living before, until I just moved to this place where we haven't put solar on yet, yeah, we had Enphase. Yep.
Great. That's great.
And actually, my story goes back to kind of early. I was teaching classes at Solar Universe, and they were only using Enphase. They were doing this thing where it was like a franchise, and they were, back in the day, I guess that model didn't work because they're not around anymore. But we would always have somebody from Enphase come in. You probably might know Peter Lum.
Yeah, of course. He's still with us. Great trainer.
Yeah, great guy. And so he would come to my classes and things like that too in different places. I remember even having him come to a class in Canada one time. Mm-hmm. And another time I met with Raghu, I guess one of the founders over there at Enphase. Yeah. And I remember we met in a restaurant in Berkeley on University Avenue. And then after I met with him, Peter Lum did some training to get me to do Enphase training. And then, I don't know, business got busy and I went one way. And I think maybe too, what happened is they kept Peter doing full-time stuff, or maybe hired a full-time guy. And I was just looking at doing a little part-time stuff. But I was trained to do Enphase training back, back in the day. Yeah.
Well, Raghu's still with us too, And I mean, he and I worked, together quite a bit, particularly in the VPP space. So yeah, we've come a long way since. We went from a single product micro only company to, full systems company, VPP enabler. So it's been quite a journey. I've only been there 6 years, not 20 years like Raghu, but even in the 5 years that I've been there, it's been quite a journey and an enormous transition.
Yeah, you guys have kind of taken over the market.
Well, we're just getting started.
Yeah, and are you ranked number one for residential? Is that in the United States?
We are.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we're the number one residential, certainly on the solar side. And we're growing, the battery business a lot. And really, we think of ourselves as a systems company. So not really a one-trick pony anymore. And, with NEM going away in many states and globally as well.
So that's net metering. Yep.
Yeah, net metering. We're seeing just attachment rates of batteries with solar just going up dramatically. I mean, the vast majority of new systems sold in California, of course, are with batteries.
Great.
Which help you optimize your self-consumption, but increasingly you can participate in virtual power plants and make those batteries available to someone that needs the capacity and get paid for it. So
yeah, when I was, of course, learning about Enphase back in the day, there was, you guys weren't using batteries. Pretty much nobody was using batteries. It was all full credit for exporting, and solar was, it was a dream to be 1% of the energy mix. And I think we beat that by now.
Yeah, we did. Although we have a long way to go. I don't think we should pat ourselves on the back yet. If you look at the US, residential solar penetration of the total 87 million addressable homes is only 7 or 8%. Whereas, if you take a country like the Netherlands, it's about 33%. Australia also in the 30s. So, imagine what this country would look like if we were to put solar on another, 20-25% of the homes and get to a penetration level like we have in Australia and the Netherlands. It actually would solve our problem. People are talking about, we're not ready for AI. We don't have the energy. We can't build big power plants. Well, you don't need to. Just use the 87 million homes and convert them to mini power plants and participate in these markets. So I'm a big believer of that. So yes, we came a long way since you started in it. But we're not anywhere where we need to be. Like we are still in single digits in terms of penetration. So it's a big opportunity still ahead of us.
So I got an idea. Why don't we put one of those AI chips in every microinverter, and we can have a distributed, server farm or whatever, one of those things.
So yeah, maybe a better idea than putting them in space,
Uh-huh.
But no, actually, we are working with a lot of AI enablement within our systems right now. And as a matter of fact, the VPPs that we are enabling will soon benefit from us forecasting capacity. So we'll be doing capacity forecasting. We're rolling that out actually later this quarter. And then on an aggregated basis, let's say you bundle all the batteries and we know the consumption patterns in the home. We understand when they're there, when they're not there, when they're consuming, when they're exporting, and when that battery is full and when that battery is empty, because we have that data and we can run a pretty good algorithm to predict available capacity, which I think is going to be very useful to the utilities that are hunting for capacity and don't necessarily trust an individual system. But if we could aggregate that capacity for them and then do some P80 forecasting around it, I think we can become a lot more useful to utilities than we are today.
Okay, so for the virtual power plants, the VPPs, how does that work with Enphase? Like, I know that a lot of people are interested in getting involved, and maybe there's people that got Enphase, back in the day, and they have some 170s on their roof or 175s. How can they get into that too? And then, did you say P80 forecasting? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like probability. So,
Okay.
80% probability that capacity will be there.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the way, Sean, that, you can get involved is actually not super difficult. We are, and particularly if you have a battery, because then you have dispatchable capacity that can be dispatched not just to meet your own self-consumption requirements. So in other words, you want to use some of that storage when rates are highest, so you don't have to buy from the grid and you take this energy from the battery. But also increasingly so, there are these VPP programs, virtual power plant programs available you can participate into. And we are already API integrated into over 50 of those programs.
Okay, and so I always like to explain what the initials mean. So API?
Yeah, so the API is basically a way for you to integrate into another protocol that allows that protocol to steer and basically control the battery from time to time. And so what that means is, let's say there is a utility, okay? And the utility is looking to source capacity to manage the grid during certain hours of the day. And they can access that two ways, right? They can say, I'm going to go build another gas peaker power plant. I'm going to turn that thing on and off based on when I need capacity, or I'm going to contract with a power producer that's going to provide me that capacity when I need it. Or we help that utility, and often they devise programs, and those programs have a value, and homeowners then get notified that you can enroll in the program. And that means that our battery needs to be able to basically connect to those programs and allow a utility to access our battery and to send the signal to us, to our battery that sits in the home of our customers, and to basically tell that battery, you need to discharge now because we need capacity on the grid, and for that you get paid. And so increasingly, particularly in the summer months, you're basically seeing utilities wanting to access that distributed capacity that's in the battery that sits behind the meter in someone's home, and then send a signal through our API that allows that battery to be discharged from time to time and provide capacity when the utility needs it most, as an alternative to the utility sourcing that from a single fossil fuel plant. And as we deploy more and more systems in homes, I mean, we have over 5 million homes with an Enphase solar system. We have almost 3 million in the US, and not all of them yet with batteries, but we can add those batteries. Then that becomes quite useful to utility. We basically, if you look at what the potential is here, is a utility that's sourcing gigawatts of capacity can also source that from distributed power plants like solar with batteries that can be controlled and accessed. And we have hundreds of thousands of those in California alone. If you add a battery to all those systems, you can unleash multiple gigawatts of dispatchable capacity as an alternative to, for instance, relying on a nuclear power plant or building a gas power plant. And so, that's what we really are enabling. Now, the utility has to trust that this capacity will be there, right? So they don't want to rely on you as much as, they're going to like you to have your Wi-Fi on when they need it, right? So, but the beautiful thing about aggregating these thousands of batteries that are sitting in people's homes is that we don't have to rely on an individual home. Actually, we can aggregate more than they need so that we can build in, maybe a 10% failure rate, and that they always have the capacity that they need. And what I mean by capacity forecasting, we can work with utilities to determine how much capacity they need by zip code, literally. And then we can determine, with some redundancy built into it, how many homes would need to participate into a VPP and how, if they can meet those capacity requirements. And so, what I see is, and this is where I think the next chapter is for the United States, is we did a pretty good job with solar, but not good enough. We're only at 7 or 8% penetration. But to make these systems more useful and more productive to both the homeowner and the utility, particularly with these big loads that need to be interconnected, like data centers, we need to put more flexible resources behind the meter. We need to put more flexible resources like a battery that can be charged and discharged simply by sending a signal, a bidirectional EV charger that we're launching this year that can connect the car to the home, but also can help dispatch the capacity that's in the car to the grid. All these flexible resources, if you bundle them well and you put them into one program, can really move the needle for a utility that's hunting for capacity. So we got to go from dumb solar to smart, flexible, bundled assets behind the meter that provide more valuable to the homeowner and to the utility.
Awesome. So I guess the way to communicate with the utility back to the customer through their Wi-Fi or their internet is the API, the application programming interface. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty neat. And, I keep thinking too, that the way that we're having virtual power plants, that possibly they could have a data center that's virtual too, and really just like have an NVIDIA chip inside of each inverter or at each house some way. Maybe someday that'll happen. Maybe I'm way too early. It's like sometimes they say you come up with a great idea, but you're too early. So I'll just broadcast it right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly no expert on what the right data center configuration is. But what I do know is that the model that's currently being rolled out is that those data centers, if you do the research, is many of them did not get approved. For whatever reason, they're in the queue for interconnection and they're not getting approved this year.
Well,
and that's
they might
a
need the
huge
energy.
problem.
Yeah.
And also, I think communities just don't see the benefit. They're like, wait a minute, you're putting this massive data center and you're saying that you're going to generate a lot of your own power, which means you're going to put a big gas power plant there. And I'm going to be taking the fumes and I'm going to be breathing that pollution. And you're going to take my water and my energy bill will go up. How do I benefit from this? And so what I think we should do, and those are conversations we are having with some of those players, is to say, well, hold on, wait a minute. How about you access available distributed capacity that sit in the home, or we help upgrade those homes that are solar only, add a bunch of batteries.
Yeah.
And maybe the data centers can help pay for that capacity that's installed and get credit for the remote capacity offsets that could become available, as long as the utility, the regulators, the data center operator, and the OEM, that is us as the manufacturer, and our millions of clients come together and say, you know what, let's tap into the tremendous amount of availability that's there in these distributed resources called homes that are already interconnected to the grid. You don't have to wait for an interconnection permit. It's already interconnected to the grid. And let's add more smart, flexible resources like the battery, bidirectional EV charger, and be able to access those when needed And also by having more generation at the home, meaning solar, and having more storage capacity at the home, you reduce the overall load from the grid, and that frees up capacity for those data centers to be interconnected. So you have both dispatchable capacity that's available if they need it, and they should pay for that, and the homeowner should receive money for that, but also be able to put more generation, increase the solar and add more solar. And so I think this problem that we're talking about here, which is how do you get homeowners positively engaged, with a data center coming in town, is by helping them contribute to the solution and make sure they get paid for it. So that's one. And the other one is by simply leveraging the interconnection points that are already there, called homes, and just putting more generating capacity, meaning solar, and more batteries there so that you have firm capacity. Because these data centers don't just need solar, they also need storage because they need firm capacity, right? Their load isn't super peaky. So they do need some base load capacity, which, yes, a gas power plant could provide, but in a much cleaner, more engaging way for the homeowner. Batteries and solar can also provide that firm capacity, right? Because during the day you generate, you can export, and you can add, you can store the excess energy in the battery, and then you can discharge that battery overnight. And so I think this idea of creating distributed power plants at scale to help offset some of the load requirements for these big data centers is something you're going to see come into play this year by necessity, because a lot of these guys are simply not getting approval to be interconnected to the grid.
That sounds like a great deal too. If you wanted to get everybody in the town solar, then we'll let you bring in the data center. It's a deal. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's like, guys, you're coming to town, and rather than saying, I'm going to put a bunch of demand onto the grid and your energy rates are going to go up because the utility is going to have to build, all these upgrades, and you're going to pay for it, homeowner, or, I'm going to take all your water. I think the idea of saying, exactly as you said, is let's get communities to participate in supporting the enablement of a data center coming to town and generate hundreds of megawatts of new capacity, but in a distributed fashion, and get them to participate in this and get paid for it, for making that available. And so, I see this idea of where, you got the big data center guys to basically help buy down the cost of distributed solar and batteries, as long as that is, partially made available to offset the capacity requirements for the data center. And then you need regulators and utilities that share that vision. And we are increasingly seeing that. And then, that's one part of the solution. I'm not saying it's the entire solution, but it's one part of the solution and a way to engage communities which currently are not being positively engaged in a solution.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. And perhaps for the battery, they can also buy me an electric vehicle that's bidirectional. Can you arrange that?
Well, you got a good
Marco.
wish list there, Sean. I don't have a big white beard, and I'm not wearing a red suit, But well, you're saying something there. Listen, the battery, each one of our batteries, is 10 kilowatt hours of capacity and 7.4 kilowatts of power. So, a car is 7 times that, right? Mm-hmm. So you make a very good point. If you put an EV at that same site, and that EV has soon our bidirectional EV charger that we're launching, then the EV can be programmed. So let's, for instance, you say, okay, in the morning when I wake up, I want 100 miles of charge in my EV, because that gets me from home to work and back, and then some. But the other 200 miles that I would have as capacity in my battery, someone else can access. And if that someone else is the data center, that once that capacity from these thousands of EVs that are doing nothing at night, right? Then we should absolutely say, okay, let's make that happen as long as the homeowner gets paid for that. So I see for sure 100% these frameworks that will come together, and we're working hard on that to make sure that wherever there's a large load that needs to be interconnected, but the communities and the utilities and the regulators are struggling, that we figure out together in an economically viable way to dispatch and to deploy as many of these flexible resources, the EV with the bidirectional EV charging can discharge to the grid, more batteries, and maybe even add more solar to the home to solve part of that problem. And it is entirely possible. And some people say, well, it doesn't really move the needle. Can you guys manufacture enough of this stuff? We have a plant, we have a factory, an Enphase factory in Arlington, Texas, that can spit out the equivalent of one nuclear power plant a year of product, batteries, microinverters for solar. So it does make a difference, right? I mean, good luck right now. If you're a data center and you want to go develop something and you want to go buy a gas turbine from GE or Siemens, you're going to be in the back of the line. And then good luck trying to get a permit for that, and good luck trying to get that interconnected. So I think we have to make sure that this distributed, aggregated, flexible capacity that we can enable is part of the solution.
Great. So how soon until I can get an Enphase electric vehicle? No.
Well, you're going to be able to get very soon an Enphase bidirectional EV charger for your electric vehicle.
I would love to get that. Yeah.
So we're not going to manufacture cars, but we're going to make those cars that are already being manufactured by the various suppliers, Kia, many others. We're going to make sure that our bidirectional EV charger is compatible with those manufacturers, so that when you buy an electric vehicle, or if you already have one, then you can basically switch out your old kind of dumb EV charger for a bidirectional one. So you get two things. Number one is you have backup for your home, because our bidirectional EV charger allows your home to basically switch to your car, which forms a microgrid through our bidirectional EV charger in the event of a power outage, and you can draw from your car to power your entire home. We got a couple of videos already out there where we demoed that, and it works. And then separately, the other thing that the bidirectional EV charger will do is we can dispatch that capacity in the EV when you're asleep and you're doing nothing. We can dispatch that capacity from your EV to the grid, for instance, for the benefit of a data center that's going to pay you. So you're going to be asleep and you're going to make money with this bidirectional Enphase EV. Yeah, and it will lower your lease rate, things like that. So it's not just a resiliency kind of, tool, but it is a way to make money while you sleep.
Any idea on how soon that will be that we could get the bidirectional EV charger?
Yeah, it will be available in the second half of this year. And we're trying to pull in that date as fast as we can. But, I've seen it work, the early versions, and it's pretty cool.
I can't wait to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. And so for all of you guys that already have an EV or buying a new EV, I think, why would you not want that? Why would you not want a bidirectional EV charger if you've already invested in the EV? Because you can back up your home and you can make money with your car.
And I guess there'll be certain cars that will work with it, because not all cars are going to be able to export.
Yeah, I mean, and we're also need to make sure that we are integrated with the different car manufacturers. But, we've had many already at our lab here in Fremont, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're integrated with as many manufacturers as possible, so our customers can participate and go from relatively dumb charging to, really intelligent charging, including the bidirectionality, and make money with their car.
Great. Well, I'd love to see that Fremont lab. This podcast was brought to you by soil. Just think how hungry you would be without soil. I remember hearing before, like back in the day, that they were taking Enphase inverters that were working and putting them in boiling pots of water. Do they still do that?
Well, our testing is pretty rigorous. So I can tell you this, is that, microinverters are warranted for 25 years, as you know. And by the way, our microinverter technology is in everything that we make. It's in the bidirectional EV chargers, it's in the batteries, it's underneath the solar on your roof. And what we've learned, because we have over 85 million of these microinverters already deployed and operating, is that our failure rate is by far the lowest in the industry. You don't have a single point of failure because all of our products have several microinverters in them. So if one fails, the other ones still work. And also, the warranty life of 25 years is longer than anyone warrants an inverter in the industry. And guess what? The testing that has been done, not just by us, but also other utilities that use the product, show us that the useful life of that microinverter is longer than 25 years. So it's the most robust product you can buy, and also safe. It's AC technology, right? Low voltage, not DC. So it's safe for firefighters, when they go on the roof and then, if there's a fire anywhere and they, see a solar system on a battery, they don't have to be worried about an Enphase system because it's low voltage. The risk of being electrocuted by our system is virtually nil.
And then also, too, I believe it's the inverters that are going under the solar modules. You click them right into the battery.
Yeah, those inverters are also in the battery.
It's like the same ones.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about, the inverters in the battery, we literally are doing an over-the-air upgrade right now, and all of our batteries and new batteries will have this, but it's the concept which we've trademarked as PowerMats, is, with a usual, when you buy a non-Enphase battery, often those are big inverter boxes, that are next to the battery. They're hybrid inverters, and they always basically are drawing the same power to support the battery, right? Mm-hmm. And it all comes through one box. What Enphase PowerMats does, and it's really cool, is when we notice that the load in the home, is down, right? And so at night, your load typically, unless you're using a bunch of air conditioning at night, but for most of the year, your load at night is a lot less than your load during the day, okay? And so we know that. And with PowerMats, our battery basically can turn off automatically, you don't have to do anything, some of the microinverters so that fewer microinverters are working to support a lower load. A hybrid big string inverter box cannot do that. It's always drawing the same power to support the battery, to support whatever load. And in the Enphase PowerMats technology that's new, that we're pushing through right now, you basically can support lower loads with fewer micros, and therefore you are consuming a lot less power to support lower loads and ultimately save a lot more money. So the efficiency is really high. So it's like we call it the effective efficiency is much higher than our competitors. So I think where people go wrong, they look at, what's my upfront cost of a battery? But the question people should ask is, what's the cost per kilowatt hour used and produced and lifetime warranty and throughput? And you look at all of that and you throw it in the blender. The Enphase value prop is actually a really good value prop, and it's the safest one on the market. So you're right. Yeah, our little microinverters, they're everywhere. They're an EV charger, they are in the battery, and they're on the roof.
Yeah, and so if you look at a power and efficiency curve, at low power, an inverter is less efficient. So if you can cut off a few inverters and just have, say, one inverter going, you could be at the peak of your efficiency curve for that inverter. So that would...
Exactly. For that time of the day. Exactly.
That's nice. And then if you're a prepper and you're ready for the end of the world, you've got extra redundancy there too. So if like one of the inverters goes down, maybe like a bullet goes through it or something, you got extra inverters that are still working.
Exactly. There's not a single point of failure with an Enphase system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that makes them more bulletproof. So great.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, I can't wait to get that bidirectional EV charger at the end of the year. And it's great talking to you. Any famous last words?
No, I appreciate the time. I do want to get on your boat on one of these days and go underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, And by the way, I have to look it up, but one of the big European shipping companies put a giant array of solar panels on their cargo ship with Enphase microinverters.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'll look it up for you, but it's really cool. You have, hundreds of panels with Enphase microinverters powering part of the load of a big cargo ship.
Yeah, and somewhere I have a slide that's probably about 16 years old of a picture of Enphase working on the South Pole.
So, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
And so they did latitude tilt, which is like straight up and down 90 degrees on the South Pole. And then they get a lot of reflection. And so the South Pole is actually like a desert. There's not a lot of precipitation, a lot of sunny days when the sun's up half the year. And so you get all that reflection and all that direct sunlight. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, about, data centers in space, if they ever get to that point, they should, power it with Enphase microinverters because, maintenance is virtually zero, right? But one advantage about space is that you have sun 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that would be one advantage of putting data centers in space.
Yeah, okay.
And if they are, I hope they're powered by Enphase.
All right. Well, I'll tell all my space buddies to make that happen.
Good. Well, I appreciate it, Sean. Good to talk to you.
Okay, Marco Krapels, and thanks for tuning in to the podcast, everyone. And go to SolarSEAN.com and get yourself NABCEP certified, and you can learn actually about Enphase microinverters and all kinds of inverters in my classes. So take it easy, everyone. Woo!